conspiring to produce the kind of ethics that we have in humans. I don't see that as a major problem, even if I did. Even if, for example, my scientific or scientistic, as it's been called, worldview, said that there is no good account of it, that we, or rather, suppose it said that we are all immoral, selfish, and horrible. My answer to that would be, again, so what? It doesn't affect the truth of what's going on in the universe. If it's true that the facts of the universe are horrible and ruthless and callous and awful, then tough, let's live with it. Fortunately, it isn't like that, but if it were, we would have to live with it. You can't change the way the universe is just to suit human desires.
Dr. Dennet, he just wants to jump in.
You mentioned Nietzsche, and I'd just like to remind you that Nietzsche was brilliant on the ignobility of the traditional idea that the reason people are good is so that they will get reward in heaven, that they need the carrot and the stick of heaven and hell in order to be good. I think that is, I think the good news is that people don't believe that. And the really good news is, it's a good thing they don't believe it because it's such a paltry and childish notion of why people are good. I look around the world and I see people that are wonderful, engaged people. I'm sure many of the people in this room who their morality does not depend on a belief in a supreme being at all. And I think it's very important that we break the habitual link, especially in this country, between being godless and being immoral. I think that's just a calumny and it should stop.
Okay, now the counterpoint.
So I guess I just wanted to comment that I'm always interested when this discussion about ethics and morality comes up, that you would expect an evolutionist, especially one who has promoted the idea that evolution is pretty much uncaring about anything except propagation of selfish genes and blind, pitiless indifference, as Dawkins has described it, that carries with it. Why then would we, as creatures who are products of that process, if that's all there is, suddenly here on this stage be worrying about morality, about altruism, about doing good? This is again the paradox that I see as not sufficiently explained by evolutionary biology or sociobiology, because it calls us to do things that are contrary to that. If I'm walking down the bank of a river and I hear a call for help for somebody who's drowning in the middle of the river, and that person turns out to be my worst enemy, evolution would say, let him go. Less of his DNA, more of mine. And yet I think all of you would recognize that in that circumstance, you would at least have that impulse, that deep sense that the right thing to do is to try to save that person, even if you put yourself at risk. You may not act upon that impulse, but I bet you'll have it. So where is that coming from? And how can we so easily discount that on the basis of blind, pitiless indifference?
It's no more paradoxical than the fact that we use contraception. You, as a Darwinian, know perfectly well that using contraception is a deeply un-Darwinian thing to do. We have absolutely no problem with that. It's a fact that our big brains, because they're big brains, enable us to override that Darwinian imperative, and in exactly the same way we can override the Darwinian imperative to be selfish. It's just not a problem, or if it is a problem, it's one whose solution stares us in the face every time we use a contraceptive.
Let's see if we can go through a couple more questions here. Yes.
Hello, I'm Tarnab Khaitan from India, and I study human rights law in Oxford. I want to push the non-atheists, the believers, to show Richard's hypothesis B. I'm willing to concede that evolution is, for a moment, that evolution is wrong and that science is inadequate as a discipline to explain it. I want you to show to me how what is the difference in the ontology of God and unicorns. Why are the two concepts different from each other?
God said what? God
Unicorns.
Unicorns.
Oh, unicorns.
Who'd like to conquer the unicorn? Ben?
I don't know if I want to deal with unicorns, but but I will say that one has to recognize that it's absolutely impossible to prove the existence of God. You simply can't do it. It's something you have to feel. And it's what I was getting at earlier when I talked about that thing that distinguishes us from all the other animals. And, you know, the incredible complexity of our brains that allows us to have that vertical relationship. It's a feeling. And, you know, we, as sophisticated as we are with all of our MRIs and our PET scanners and things like that, we have never been able to discover the origin of a thought. We don't know the origin of a feeling. We can talk about electrophysiological responses, but we cannot take it to the next level. We cannot define that. We cannot put that in a box. I think that's one of the things that makes us different. And, you know, I will be the first to tell you that I cannot in any way explain it. I cannot prove it. And by the same token, my colleagues here cannot prove theirs either. So it's a matter of how much faith do you have. I simply don't have enough faith to believe that something as complex as our ability to rationalize, think, and plan, and have a moral sense of what's right and wrong just appeared. I don't have enough faith to believe it.
Dr. Dennet, can you explain the origin of a thought or an emotion?
Yes, but not in a minute. This is a wonderful occasion. It's a thrill. I am honored, and I'm particularly thrilled by this panel discussion because on my left, Dr. Carson, on my right, Dr. Collins, have underlined the importance of the questions that I've been actually spending my career on. How do you get the evolution of consciousness? That's the stumbling block for Dr. Carson. How do you get the evolution of morality? That's the stumbling block for Dr. Collins. And they both say, I just can't see how that's possible. I think it's because they haven't tried hard enough. It's hard to do. And that's what I've been trying to do my career. And I really think they should look more closely at the work that has been done on the evolution of cognition and consciousness.
What is the answer? What is the answer? I'm waiting.
You don't have time. I mean,
read Dennet's books.
That's the answer.
Let's take a couple more questions. I think we have time for just a few more questions.
Could I ask a question from over here?
My name is Herman Swart. I'm at Oxford doing a DPhil in psychology. Dr. Dawkins, you alluded to earlier that some of the arguments for the existence of God often rely on like the God of the gaps theory, because we can't explain something, therefore God must exist. But what about scientists who run the risk of saying because we can explain something, there is no need for God to exist? Surely they're falling in the same trap, in the same hole, as those who go around with the God of the gaps theory.
There's an infinite number of things that we can't disprove. You might say because science can explain something, can explain just about everything, but not quite, it's wrong to say therefore we don't need God. It's also, I suppose, wrong to say we don't need the flying spaghetti monster, unicorns, to revert to the previous question which was never answered, and Thor, Wotan, Jupiter, fairies at the bottom of the garden. There's an infinite number of things that some people have at one time or another believed in, an infinite number of things that nobody has believed in. If there's not the slightest reason to believe in any of those things, why bother?